Good evening, Erev Tov. Many years ago, when I was a young lecturer at Bar Ilan, I was told one day that they opened the Department of Criminology at the university. So I asked, what does criminology mean? So they told me it's a study of crime. I said, oh, I didn't know that there is such a science, and is it really necessary? By now, I know that the Department of Criminology is 10 times bigger than the Department of Bible. And that it is probably more important for the Israeli society. Only later I realized that the Torah takes criminology very seriously and devotes its 4th chapter of the book of Reshit to criminology. So I called this 3rd lecture of mine, Am I My Brother's Keeper? And an Autonomy of Fratricide. Quite difficult to pronounce this English words. Anyway, it's really a chapter of biblical criminology. Why are we so bad? Why do we have such a strong murderous inclination? Why do we hear every day on the radio that husbands slide the throats of their wives? Slash. Well, why is it so? This is the theme of our study today. And may I read a few verses in Hebrew. והאדם ידע את חווה אשתו, ותהר ותלד את קין, ותאמר קניתי איש את אדוני. There is a discussion between Rashi and other commentators whether there were sexual relations in Gan Eden. And Rashi explains this first verse as past perfect. He means, and Adam knew his wife before in Gan Eden, and now she gives birth to Cain. But but others, and I among them, believe that this is a statement of what happens now after the expulsion from Eden. May I add only one word, one sentence to what we said last week. In English, you don't speak about the expulsion from paradise, you speak about the fall. And this is absolutely impossible in Hebrew. Not that you cannot say Nephilah, but the Hebrew language, by which I mean the sages and the philosophers, never think about falling from a high degree to a lower one, which has to be corrected by Jesus, who redeems man from the original sin. This is the Christian approach. The Jewish approach is that you are actually on the same level as I try to say, you are expelled, but I believe that we even are on a higher level. So now we have sexual relations, now we have economic responsibility, now we have the consciousness of death, and we have creativity, which is perhaps the most important sign of our existence outside of Eden. So I, not as Rashi, believe that this cannot mean that this happened in paradise, because in paradise they were naked and they were not ashamed of being naked. Right? So men, I read now in the translation of Alter, and the human knew Eve, his woman, and she conceived and bore Cain, and she said, I have got me a man with the Lord. So the beauty of the Hebrew language that you call sexual intercourse with the word to know a wife, or a wife knows her husband, which is a very beautiful corporal and spiritual experience. So I don't have to explain this. And the human knew Eve, his woman, and she conceived. In Hebrew it says, and she became pregnant and bore Cain, and she said, Kaniti ish et Hashem. Cain, Kaniti, this is a pun. She explains why she gave to her firstborn the name of Cain, and she said, I have, Kaniti means in Hebrew, I have bought. But in biblical Hebrew, to create and to buy are synonymous, which means you get something either by buying it or by creating it. So she for sure did not buy her son, but she created her son together with God. Kaniti ish et Hashem. I hate when people say on the radio, we decided to make a second child. And you decided to make a second child. So Chava was on a higher level of understanding. She's very, very proud that she is the companion of God in the creation of the first natural person. Adam and Eve were created by God, and now she creates together with God the first natural person. And she calls him Cain, which means the word of creation, the name of creation. This is a hymn for motherhood. She's so elated by the experience that she who has been, you see in Hebrew, you usually don't use the word ish for a child. And she says, I have created a person with the help of God. Where does she use the word ish? It's the only place in the old Bible that a child is called ish. And the professor was at Brandeis, Nahum Sarna, who wrote a very beautiful commentary to the book of Breshit, said that this is a connection with the verse that she was created, Ki me'ish lukach hazot, she was created from the rib of a person. Now she says, yes, I was created from your rib, but I'm able to make an ish. So whoever thinks that this is that men and women, man and wife are not equal in the Torah, you see that they are really equal, because she uses the word ish, and she does now something which her husband cannot do, to give life to another human being. So this is a wonderful background for a story of murder. No, I'm not humorous, I'm very serious, dead serious. The story starts wonderfully, that this boy will be murdered by his brother, which means that all this elation of the mother will be thrown to the ground. This is a seriousness. Excuse me?
Cain is the murderer.
Cain is a murderer, yes.
Right.
All right, yes, he will be the murderer, right, thank you. He will be the murderer. He won't be murdered, he will be the murderer. That's very true. All right, verse 2. And she bore as well his brother, Hevel, and Hevel became a herder of sheep, while Cain was a tiller of the soil. You excuse me for using the Hebrew terms, because they will never turn their head if they hear the Abel or something like this. So their names, we use the Hebrew words, Hevel. So this is very touching from the literary point of view. The first birth is a wonderful occasion. And the second birth is a case of habit. Could you believe this? I read this second that you see the greatness of the Torah by its reality. At firstborn, this happens only once. Right? So the second verse is so prosaic. And it says, and she bore as well, his brother, no pregnancy, no intercourse, only effect of birth of the second one as well, and she doesn't even explain his name. Now all of you know that Hevel means vapor or breath, which means something which evades, evaporates immediately, right? We go in the cold and we have vapor comes out of our mouth, in a minute it doesn't exist anymore. So everybody understands that Hevel is a very apt name for a person whose life evaporated, right? But in Yiddish you have an expression, what is the fault of the bride? That she is too beautiful. Think about it, laugh about it. What is the only failure of the bride? That she's too beautiful.
The color is too shame.
The color is too shame. Now the same is about this explanation. It's too good an explanation, because how could she know when the child was born that his life will be short and that he will be murdered? So we don't like explanations which are too good. Right? So what should we say? Should we say that she was a prophet? No. Should we say that she gave him another name? And this is only a retrospective statement. Eventually he was called Hevel because his life evaporated. Which also is not so nice as an explanation. Because the text doesn't tell us that this is retroactive, right? So I have another suggestion. In the Bible you have names which have a double meaning. So whenever I have this difficulty, and we have this difficulty quite often in the whole Bible, so I look for another meaning for the name, and then I say she meant the first meaning, but eventually it became a second meaning. So in Syriac, which is one of the Aramaic languages, Habla means shepherd. And but this also means that she is a prophetess in a way, right? So we have, I think about it only now, we have the same problem, but not so dramatically as the other solution. Anyway, maybe that Hevel actually means that she designated him to be a shepherd, and eventually it turned out that he was also short life, had a short life. Anyway, this is the beginning of the story, and now we get another piece of information that they divided the world among them. Bakasha?
Habla in Arabic means pregnant.
Pregnant?
Yeah.
Habla. This is after pregnancy, so we have to think. And you see, Hevel became a shepherd, and Cain, like his father, was a tiller of the soil. And now it happened in the course of time that Cain brought from the fruit of the soil an offering to the Lord, and Hevel too had brought from the choice firstlings of his flock, and the Lord regarded Hevel and his offering, but he did not regard Cain and his offering. And Cain was very incensed, and his face fell, Here you have the drama. What is so important, people ask me, why do you love the Bible so much? I say, because it is true. But I don't mean what they hear. I mean it's true to life. People are not depicted as black and white. The founder of religion is the first murderer. What a paradox. It is Cain who brings the first sacrifice. It is Cain who is so similar to his mother, who understands Stands that the fruit of the earth is achieved, is gained by the help of God, the master of the universe. And that when you get your produce, you have to show your thankfulness to God. This is a great insight of Cain. He was a true son of his mother. So Cain brings the first offering. And Hevel improves on what he sees that Cain has done. And it says there are two statements here. He brought the firstlings of his, how does it say?
Well, the choices of his birthday.
Yes, the choice of the firstlings, which means the best and the first. So the Torah says there is a distinction between the two sacrifices. Cain has to be praised for being the first one. Hevel has to be praised for joining him and improving on him. But the reaction of God is very harsh. God accepts the sacrifice of Hevel and disregards the sacrifice of Cain. And we as curious readers ask ourselves, how do the heroes of the story know what is done in heaven, what happens in heaven? How do they know? Usually there are some 5 such stories in the Old Bible. When God accepts a sacrifice, a fire descends from heaven and consumes the sacrifice. So if there would have been such a statement in our story, it would be very clear that one sacrifice of the, would say, the animal sacrifice was accepted, and the fruit sacrifice was not accepted. But there is no such statement here. There are other commentators who say, no, it doesn't mean that something dramatic happened. What actually means, it says God regarded Hevel and his sacrifice. So he regarded also him, not only his sacrifice. So there are people who explain this as meaning, eventually they realized that Hevel was blessed and Cain was not blessed. So not on the very same day they knew the reaction of God. I believe that most of you were educated Jewishly by Gustave Doré, the great French painter whose illustrations to the Bible accompany us from childhood. He had a tremendous imagination. So there is a picture of him, an illustration of his, called Cain, or the sacrifice of Cain and Hevel. And what he shows us there, and you saw it as children, is that from the altar of Cain, of Hevel, the smoke goes directly to the heavens. But from the altar of Cain, the smoke does not erase. And although it's not stated in the Bible, I have a feeling that this person had a good instinct for biblical narrative. And maybe he's true. So this would be very nice if the Torah would devote some 5-6 words to tell us how they knew. But they know it for sure. And it says that Cain took it very, very badly. Cain was very incensed, and his face, for in the whole Bible we don't have the idiom, naflu panav. But we instinctively understand it very well, that a person in depression doesn't go upright. He lowers his head, and he feels lowered, ashamed, depressed. Vayiplu panav. Like in English you say you fall in love, in Hebrew you would say your head falls down, or your face actually falls down, which shouldn't be taken too literally. And I want to tell you now a short story. When I was retired from Bar Ilan, I taught a couple of years in Tel Aviv in a secular college for Judaism, which is called Alma. Alma means the world in Aramaic. Alma is a very beautiful place, and I liked to teach there very much. And most of the students, if not all of them, were secular. And I don't know what was the topic of my course there. What I remember is that on my right side there was a student at the age of 30 or more who was very dedicated to my biblical studies, and he was really intrigued by whatever I said. One of the lessons he suddenly cries out, "When I get a son, I will call him Cain." I don't know why he said this, but you know, teachers have something like 10 to 20 seconds to understand the situation and to find the right reaction. Don't think that to be a teacher is such an easy thing. It's almost like Magav, how do you say? A policeman who has to react to a terrorist act, he has to react very quickly. So I knew that he speaks to my yarmulke, that he's angry with the representative of the Jewish God in his class, right? Which is me. Why is he so angry? So I dared to confront him. And I said to him, "Listen to me very well, Abu Cain." If you don't laugh, you don't know Arabic. Abu Cain is like Abu Said. Abu means father. And in Arab is called after his firstborn. So I was very angry. To call his son after the first murderer, he must be very, very angry with the Torah. This is a rebellious statement, isn't it? So I said to him, "Listen to me very well, Abu Cain. I believe that you are angry with God, that He discriminated between the two brothers and caused the first murder. And you don't blame Cain, you blame him. Now all of you have to make an assessment whether you agree with Abu Cain or not. But I want to tell you that what the story really means is, whatever happens to you, the depths of the feeling of discrimination that you feel, the injustice which you feel, are never, never, never a justification for murder. This is what the story means. I hope you agree with me. So please, reconsider. You should be proud of this story. But how come that he was angry with God? Afterwards I found it in literature. There is a liberal modern belief. How would he say that all men are created equal? And if they are not equal in their talents, in their abilities, we have to compensate the weaker by overlooking the discrepancy between the talented and the untalented, between the strong and the weak, between the healthy and the sick. So if our children or grandchildren bring the drawings from the kindergarten, we praise the untalented picture where you can't tell whether it's a mountain or a girl. More than we praise the good picture. And we place them both on the Frigidaire as equal, right? But God is not a kindergarten teacher. God is, the Lord is the God of reality as we know it. And in reality, there is no such equation between the abilities or the fortunes of people. And we have to learn to live in this injustice of the situation. And we cannot expect God to correct this situation and to make really people, all people, exactly the same, which would be horrible, right? So this is the meaning of this story. How should Cain learn to face the fact that Hevel found a better way for religious expression than he himself, which happens to us every day in the competition which is called life. So we can now continue. So God was silent, which in a way God didn't explain. If God would be nicer, he would say, Cain, please understand, I like your sacrifice very much, but next time try better. Try harder. Now God is silent. But this is life. God is almost always silent, isn't he? You cannot expect the Bible or the Torah to be different than life. Then it would be an untruthful book. But now that Cain is in a deep depression, God speaks to him. In other words, it's not an indifferent God. It's a God who is enigmatic, because we have to explain his behavior. And we think about the Shoah, it's very difficult to explain his behavior. So he's silent most of the time. But here he speaks up and tries to help Cain to overcome his depression. So we will read it now. I must say that I don't like the translation of Alter. I will read it first and I will try to destroy it, and then I will read you the translation of the New Jewish Publication Society translation, which is a very accepted one in English-speaking countries. And you understand that this is a poem. And poetry is always much more difficult in any language than prose. So it's enigmatic, it is very short. Anyway, I'll read now the translation of Alter, and I will show you that I read it first in Hebrew, but the Hebrew is really very, very difficult. So God says to Cain, Lama chara lecha velama naflu panecha? Why are you incensed, and why is your face fallen? Which is like a yeka, which means God doesn't ask a question of information. This is a rhetorical question, which means don't feel so badly about it. Put it into proportion, what has happened to you. Why do you take it so badly? Lama chara lecha velama naflu panecha? Why are you incensed, and why is your face fallen? For whether you offer well or whether you do not, at the 10th flap sin crouches, and for you it is longing. Which means, Alter tells us, I really don't care whether you offer well or you don't offer well, which is a banal statement. Which means as if I would tell the children, there's no real difference whether you paint well or you paint in a clumsy way. No. I read you now the old good translation of JPS, and it says so. Why are you distressed, and why is your face fallen? Surely, if you do right, there is uplift. But if you do not do right, sin crouches at your door. You remember that the major is the fallen face. So in Hebrew there is a word se'ed, which means uplift. We're very difficult, but anyway, Ibn Ezra gives an interpretation which the translators here adopted, and he says so. If you do eventually the right thing, you overcome your depression. If you do right, you will have an uplift. You will lift your face, right? But if you don't do right, remember that sin is crouching at the opening of your, at the foot sin, no? Doorstep. At the doorstep of your house, of your tent. לפתח חטאת רובץ. Is here a figure as if sin is a dangerous animal which is waiting with its open mouth at the opening of your house and wants to swallow you. This is the whole story here in a nutshell. It says, I would say it in psychological terms. One of the worst things which can happen to us if we feel that people have victimized us, that we enter a mentality of, in Hebrew you say, korbaniyut, which means that you feel yourself as a victim and you don't assume responsibility for your future behavior. There's always an explanation for all your failures in the past and the future ones. Because you are a victim. Because God or the teacher or whoever don't love you enough. So if I may coin an expression in English, you will call it self-victimization. But in Hebrew you call it korbaniyut. You feel as a korban. Now God warns Cain from this feeling. And he says, it depends on your behavior. If you decide to do right, you will have an uplift. Mitzvah goveret mitzvah. A good action brings another good action. But if you decide not to do the right, then the bad inclination increases, and it is like an animal which tries to swallow you. Now this is very, very interesting, that in biblical criminology, the murderous inclination is depicted as a wild animal. What do all these murderers do? They say, I don't know what overcame me. I was overcome by a strong wish to eliminate somebody. To eliminate my wife or my child. I could not restrain it because it was so strong. This is what the Torah tells us here in the 4th chapter. Once you yield to this self-victimization, you believe that you are not responsible for your behavior because God or people hate you, then you will be really overpowered by your eternal quest for doing wrong. Yes, Bakasha.
If Hebel did not bring a sacrifice, if Hebel never brought a sacrifice, Cain's reaction, or God's reaction, I assume, would be Cain tried. He brought from the fruits of the land. He really didn't do anything bad. Why do we continuously find something wrong with what Cain brought? He brought from the fruits of the land.
Because all our behavior is comparative. All our behavior is comparative. What you try to do is to write an alternative story where there is no comparison. That is, it's wrong. In life, whatever you do, is on the background of the behavior of other people. You are never alone. So you want to write a story about Cain where he's alone. All right, so God says, next time try better. But no, he's not alone. In the class of mathematics, there are 2 students here. And I get my 80, and he gets his 100. So the problem is, how would they take it? The fact that the very success of the other one means that I was not really successful.
But if Cain brought his second, if Hevel brought his sacrifice first, and then Cain brought his, I would appreciate what you said.
But this is not a great achievement if you imitate your brother. The problem is that you are the forerunner, you are the great person of religion, but it's still primitive religion. Now your brother learns from you. This happens in life every day. Your competitor is learning from you and is improving on you. And you can say, but I invented this. Who cares whether you invented it or not? The fact is that he overrun you. How do you say? He overtakes you. You see, the story is very deep. It's so close to life. So we shouldn't simplify the story. We should see its interest in you know what I mean. All right. Thank you for the question. Anyway, so I read it again, the old poem in the old translation. Surely, if you do right, there is an uplift. But if you do not do right, sin crouches at your door. Its urge is towards you. It wants to. The bad behavior is like an animal with an urge, an animal with an intention to swallow you up. This is true about alcohol. This is true about murderous wishes. It can be so strong that you lose control, because, so to speak, it has an independent will to swallow you up. And towards you is its urge. Yet you can be its master, which means you can feel very badly about it. But I, the Lord, tell you, you have the power to overcome your depression and try harder next time. After all, it's not so difficult. Not so difficult. If you don't take it so personally and seeing it a sign of divine injustice, next time you bring justice said and done. But what's so bad about it? See, all these people who sit in jail in Israel believe that, I mean, the ministers and so on, that if they wouldn't have made this tragic mistake, they would be still ministers. You know, they didn't control themselves and they succumbed to their quest for money, their greed. So if they could only roll back their biography and start again, all would be all right, right? The outcome teaches them the greatness of the mistake. So God says, you have the power to control this animal who wants to swallow you up, which may be called greed, if it's about money, or lust, if it's about love. So you have only to decide that you are in charge, and you are not a perpetual victim. ואתה תמשול בו, and you will rule it. So, as you can guess, Cain does not give the proper answer to the divine intervention. Now you blame him too, right? If he would only say, thank you, God, for speaking with me, I appreciate it very much, in spite of the fact that I brought a little, I made some mistakes with my sacrifice. You speak to me, and you empower me, and you tell me that I am strong enough to control my urges? Thank you, I will try. The story would be not included in the Bible because it's not interesting enough. So he makes a second mistake. He does not accept what God tells him, which is usually what happens to us. He makes the initial mistake and then we make one mistake after the other. A chain of mistakes. Because it becomes more and more difficult to change course after the first mistake. So he's quiet. I read in English, and Cain said to Abel his brother, let us go out to the field. And when they were in the field, Cain rose against Abel his brother and killed him. Now if you have a pencil or a pen, please put the words, those in the quotation marks, let us go out to the field, in brackets, because they are not in the Hebrew Bible. They are an edition of our translator, and you naive readers believe what you see. So it's my obligation to tell you that this is, he makes a footnote, which is not in your copy, but in the footnote he says that he added these words according to the Aramaic, Greek, and Midrashic amplification. Because in the Hebrew it does not say what Cain said to Abel. And it's a very ambiguous verse. I'll read it to you in Hebrew. ויאמר קין אל הבל אחיו, ויהי בהיותם בשדה, ויקום קין. It does not say what he said. Now, if there is a lacuna, there is a gap in the story. This is an opening for Chazal. And now, you know, they were so creative, they only waited for gaps in the text. Would say one of these sages to his wife, I go to the Beit Midrash, hopefully I will find a gap, so I can amplify, I can show my creativity. So there are at least 3, if not 30, wonderful criminological midrashim which amplify what Cain said to Abel. So one midrash says there was an economic rivalry between them. The other midrash says there was a religious, a theological rivalry. Warn you, religion can be very bad for you. One said the temple will be on my ground, and the other side said the temple will be on my ground, and they fought forever. They killed each other. So this is what Chazal teaches us. It may be an economic rivalry, it may be a theological rivalry, and it may be an erotic rivalry. They both wanted a beautiful woman. So you have here the 3 courses in criminology, right? For each you devote a course. But this is not what is written. This is not what is omitted. What is omitted is that it really is unimportant what is said to him. It shows that Abel was ultimately naive and did not take care of himself, and Cain had to have some kind of a pretext which is not stated, or maybe he said, let's go to the field. Now, Sadeh, field in Hebrew, means a place where there is no social control. In other words, it's not the urban place where your parents take care of our behavior, and you won't dare to do such a thing. In the town, in the place of society, so all the crimes in the Bible are basadeh, in the open. So if a girl, in the book of Dvarim, chapter 22, if a girl is raped in the city, she is to be blamed because she could have cried out and asked for help. But if she is raped in the open, basadeh, she is never to be blamed because she was helpless. But if she is raped in the open, basadeh, She's never to be blamed because she was helpless. We are sure that she was raped. So, a biblical reader in ancient times, when he sees the word Hasadeh, it means a place where sheer violence takes over. When they were in the open field, he rises and kills his brother. You see, the Bible does not devote a lot of time, or space rather, for the motivation of the characters. It's if you see a picture, a movie, and you don't know actually why the people don't speak so much, and you don't know why they do what they do. So we can only, like Chazal, try to fill up the gap. Probably was very angry with God. He was quite envious of his brother. And he was also very angry with himself. Why am I such a weakling? Do I deserve this? So feeling weak drives him to be strong, so to speak. And he wants now to eliminate the competition. And this you have in the book of Breshit very often. Esau says, Yikrevu yumei hevel avi v'harga et achi. Let only my father die and I will kill my brother. And the brothers of Yosef, of Joseph, first think they want to kill him in order to prevent his dreams to become true. Then they say, all right, it's enough to sell him to Egypt. It's beyond the Iron Curtain. Nobody returns from that. Anyway, this is a theme in the book of Breshit. Violence and a fake and a wrong solution for competition. A violent crime as an outcome of a competition which you cannot deal with it properly. So he kills his brother. We read now verse 9. And the Lord said to Cain, where is Hevel your brother? Just like Ayeka, right? This is a wonderful opportunity for Cain to regret what he has done. Since God comes and speaks with him. He could have said, if you would be his advisor, I see you are inclined to be his advisor. You would say, dear Cain, tell the truth and say that you regret. I was overcome by this animal and I plead guilty, but please forgive me. God says, where is Cain? Where is Hevel? But in such situations, you need a lot of energy and character to assume responsibility. So he prefers to believe that the rhetorical question is an informational question, and that God does not know. A God who does not know is not a God. By definition, God knows everything. He and everybody who sins actually wants to believe that now God is overlooking what we are doing, right? Otherwise we won't sin, right? If the ceiling would have been transparent, and we would truly believe that God is seeing all our actions, we would behave differently, right? So Cain behaved as if there is no God, or there is a God who is blind. So he says to him, for me it's difficult to read it, and he said, I don't know. Just like his father, you know, when God asked him, why are you hiding from me? I don't know. But in spite of himself, if he only would have been quiet, and say, I don't know, lo yadat, but he's not able. This is what is happening to us. We try to prove that we are in the right while we are in the wrong. And he says, I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper? Am I his babysitter? Do you mean I have to look after him? I chose these words as the heading for my lesson today because I believe this is the strongest statement of irresponsibility. You are alone. You don't have a brother. You don't care for your brother. Am I my brother's keeper? Hashomer achi anochi? Some 20 years ago, when the Jews in Russia were oppressed and could not leave Russia, there was an Israeli society which calls itself Shomer Achi, the keepers of our brothers, which means we have a responsibility. They are our brothers, and we are responsible for them. And I liked it so much, that the usage of a biblical idiom in the proper way. It means that they really understood that we don't want to be kind. We want to be different. We understand that life is a context of responsibility. And for sure we are responsible for our brothers. So the murderer of his brother says, I don't know, I'm not his keeper. So the reaction of the Lord is naturally very strong. And he says to him, what have you done? You believe I don't know what you have done? I know exactly what. What have you done? Listen. Your brother's blood cries out to me from the soil. And so, cursed shall you be by the soil that gaped with its mouth to take your brother's blood from your hand. If you till the soil, it will no longer give you its strength, which means its fruit. A restless wanderer, Nabanad, a restless wanderer, shall you be on the earth. Which is a reenactment of the expulsion of his parents from Eden, right? They sinned and they were expelled to the hard soil where weeds are stronger than wheat. Right? Now he sinned 10 times worse. Tenfold. He sinned his tenfold worse. And God says, you cannot continue to toil the earth which accepted the blood of your brother. You will be a restless wanderer, or if you want, a Bedouin, not a farmer. You cannot expect that you have a relationship with the soil which accepted your blood. Now I must read you a midrash, which we forgot to translate into English, so I will translate it now. It is a very famous midrash from Breshit Rabbah, where Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, one of the greatest Tanaim, speaks. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says, קשה הדבר לאומרו ואי אפשר לפה לפרשו. Whatever I'm intending to say is very difficult to say, and it is very difficult to express, which means please fasten your belts, you will hear something horrible. This is what he says. In spite of myself, I have to make the following statement. למה הדבר דומה? לשני אתלטים שהיו עומדים ומתגוששים לפני המלך. I will give you a simile, a mashal. What is it similar? The situation of Cain and Abel. That two athletes, they use a Greek word athletes, but we would say gladiators? Gladiators. Were fighting with each other, and אילו רצה המלך פרשן. They are fighting in front of the king, I would say the Roman consul in Caesarea. and they are fighting in front of him. If the king wants to separate them, they will stay alive. If he doesn't want to separate them, one will kill the other. You understand what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is saying? It's a very uncomplimentary simile to God, right? He's like the Roman consul or the Roman king. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai continues and says, and the blood of the dying gladiator says, cries out to God, who will ask my justice, who will demand doing justice to me? Who will demand from the king doing justice for me? So I am the king, God says, and I say, the blood of your brother is calling out to Hakim Elai Min Adama, is calling out to me from the soil. So we are really shocked. What does Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai say? Says, in a way, God is similar to the Roman consul, because he could have prevented the murder. But Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says, and I have to add this, he doesn't say it explicitly. Why did God not intervene? Because God does not save us from our sins. This has to be very clear. If we want to do something horrible, we cannot rely on the kindergarten teacher who will prevent us from doing it. Life is not a kindergarten. God believes, we know it from his poetry, in free choice. And you can rule it. But if you choose not to rule it, I won't help you out by preventing your sins. The only thing that God is doing is, after the crime, is punishing the criminal. Now you can love it or hate it, but this is true to life. We cannot expect God to prevent us from using our free choice to the bad. We cannot. Yes, Baksha.
Are the old descendants of Cain or Seth? Abraham, my mother's son, said, otherwise he had a long line of the genealogy of Cain. So are we all descendants of the murderer?
No, we are all descendants of Shet, who is the third son of Adam and Chava. It is very clear. It is absolutely clear.
Why? What happened to
all the descendants of Cain died in the flood, in the Mabul. So we are different. So you are relieved now. You go home and you are... He's not our forefather. But everybody has a little Cain in his heart. I really don't care whether he was our forefather or not. I do care whether I can overcome the Cain in myself. And I feel him very strongly that whenever I try to be aggressive, or I have an inclination to be aggressive, this is the behavior of Cain. בבקשה.
On one hand, God will not prevent.
יותר בקול רם.
God will not prevent Cain from sinning, but why does that have to be on a form of heaven?
Now, when my daughter was something like 12 or 14, she learned history and she said to me, Abba, why did God allow Hitler to stay in power from 30? Oh, I'm sorry. We sinned against Islam. So my daughter asked me, why did God allow Hitler to stay in power from 33 to 45? What should I have answered her? You see? I could say only two words, בחירה חופשית, free choice. be no victims, there would be no murderers. If there are murderers, there are victims. There is an inclination of theology to improve on life and to be a fake theology. And the greatness of the Torah is its truthfulness. So afterwards, God is punishing Hitler. But in true time, Hitler or Cain are exercising their free choice. And this is a main pillar of Judaism. We are not marionettes in the hands of God. We are free agents. You could be proud of it, you may be sorry. We pay a very high price for the fact that the other one is also this free choice. The enemy, the murderer, whoever. I encourage you to ask questions because they help me to make myself. Anyway, yes please, and don't exaggerate. Yes please, Bakasha.
Don't exaggerate. In using our free choice in this divine paradox that we're in, and that sometimes we're at the effect of free choice, it's hard enough to just know where the limits are. If one gets into that level of dialogue with God, on one hand, I'm going to stand here acknowledging that you put me in the middle of a paradox where I can't solve the suffering of my people, so to speak, or of the world. But on the other hand, I can't ignore it and run off into some distant horizon and pretend that I don't feel it, because I have a soul that does feel it. So I'm going to use my free choice as fully as I can to say, God, my Father, you have put me in this paradox, and I can't be so arrogant to think that I'm God. But, and all of that, but it's a very lonely place. I mean, the human being has these limitations. He can't stay there.
I believe that you are deviating from the...
Excuse me. Can you please repeat the questions for those who...
I won't, because... no, really. I feel that this person is developing a theological dialogue with me, which is not the proper place of this lesson, and we will get lost if we follow up this kind of reasoning. What we know is that we have free choice, and we have to be very careful not to use it to the worst. But we cannot expect God from preventing the other one from exerting his free choice for the worst. But really, I can't say more than that. You can afterwards speak. So now we are very curious to see what will be the reaction of Cain. And we see that, we shall see immediately, that Cain has the ability to understand what God is saying to him. Because God is speaking in the language of punishment, not of theory, of actions. And he said, you thought you will improve on yourself. You are now deprived of the soil which was your livelihood. And you will be now a Bedouin. Now, see the reaction of Cain in verse 13. And Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is too great to bear. Now that you have driven me this day from the soil, and I must hide from your presence, I shall be restless. I shall be a restless wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me. I like very much the words that I have to leave your presence. The sin of Cain was that he did not stay in the presence of God. He believed that God is not seeing. He didn't want to be close to God. He said, hopefully God will be on vacation. I want to have a free time. Now his punishment is that he will live without the presence of God. This is a deep understanding that he deserves this punishment. He doesn't speak so much about the agricultural aspect of it, he speaks about the religious aspect. I will live now forever without your protection. Why? Because I'm not my brother's keeper. Why should I expect you to be my keeper? Right? So he's a great man, this murderer. No, really. It's like in Shakespeare, the murderers are great persons, or personalities. So he understands this very well, very well. He says only, the punishment I deserve is too harsh. Why? Ki kol motzi'i yargeni. Whoever finds me will kill me. I will be such an outcast that without the protection, not of my parents, not of society, I will live all my life in the open field. Isn't that wonderful? He said his crime is taking use of the open field, and his punishment, and he understands this, is that he perpetually live in the open field, where there is no person to protect him. There are only bad persons who want to kill him, and know that they will not be punished for this, because he is a murderer, right? So he says, whoever will find me will kill me. So God takes this into consideration. This is a prayer which is accepted. And the Lord said to him, therefore whoever kills Cain shall suffer sevenfold vengeance. Which means, Kishivatayim yukam Cain, whoever will touch you will be punished sevenfold. Know that you can imagine how many pages have been written in Jewish literature about the fact that Cain should have been punished with, how do you say, mortal, with a death penalty. He's a murderer. Why does he get away with it with being sent to exile, right? So one of the better answers which I found is that Cain is actually Rotzeach Bishgaga. Since it is the first murder, he did not understand how horrible it is. Maybe he even did not understand the finality of death. He thought he will kill him, but after a couple of days he will appear again. He did not know what that really means. So in the book of Shmot, in the book of Bamidbar, the penalty of Rotzeach Bishgaga, if God forbid you drive your car and you kill somebody without any intention, should you be punished or not? No intention, you didn't know, you really are not responsible. According to the Torah, we are punished in such a case with the punishment of exile. We go to an Ir Miklat, to a city of refuge, right? And so maybe this is a good answer, that Cain gets the punishment of Rotzeach Bishgaga, of a person who kills without full understanding of what he's doing, and he is now sent into exile, where the murderer, or the killer rather, is protected from the revenge of the family of the murdered. So here you have also this protection. God gives him a mark, and it's not a stigma, as it is in English, the sign of Cain, or in modern Hebrew, Ot Cain, that this is a stigma. Here you have a sign that you are a Nazi. No, it is the opposite. It is a mark that God said, he is protected by me, don't dare to kill him, because whoever kills Cain will be punished by remote control. Sevenfold. In other words, it's such an azhara, a warning, but not more than this, right? So maybe this is the best understanding of the end of our story, and I see that I should have ended the 10 minutes ago, but I must read with you the continuation of this chapter because I like it very much. And Cain went out, I will make it very shortly. And Cain went out from the Lord's presence and dwelt in the land of Nod. Nod in Hebrew means wandering. So he dwelt in the land of wandering, east of Eden. And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived, and bore Enoch. Then he became the builder of the city, and Cain called the name of the city like his son's name, Enoch. Why do I like it so much? Because the Torah is not black and white. And just as Cain is being the founder of religions, he is now the founder of non-agricultural civilization. Unbelievable. He made the best of his wanderings. And the Torah tells us this. You see, if you are in a very bad situation, you can improve on it. Because you assume responsibility. And you stop victimizing yourself and saying, I'm a victim, I can't do anything, I will die out of thirst in the desert. No. First of all, who has time to build a city? Those who don't have, those are not farmers. So the Torah says the first city was built by Cain. Now please turn the page and now he has other sons, Cain. And he bore also Irad, and Irad was born, to Enoch, and Irad beget Mechuyael, and Mechuyael begot Metushael, and Metushael begot Lemech, and Lemech, now the story regains its course, and Lemech took him 2 wives. The name of the one was Ada, and the name of the other was, or Ada rather, and the name of the other was Tzila. And Ada bore Yaval, and he was the first of 10 dwellers with livestock. In other words, since he doesn't till the soil, he is the father of all shepherds. And his brother's name was Yuval, and he was the first of all who play on lyre and pipe. Isn't that wonderful? Also the musicians are those who don't toil, they never really work. They only sit and with their guitar, So the children of Cain, they built the non-agricultural world. Unbelievable.
But you said they all died.
Afterwards, let them live a little and bring...
And where did Cain's wife come from?
This is an illegitimate question. You can join this person. My son, when he was 7 years old, he asked me one day in the synagogue, what did they drink in the ark? Ark, you said? Ark. What did they drink? The Torah says only what they ate. So I told him, I'll give you an answer, but you never ask me such a question. They took a driller and drilled a hole in the wall of the ark and put a faucet, and they drank water. There was very fine, clean water of the flood. But my son never dared to ask me any more questions. There are questions which are out of the story. There's a famous article, how many children did Lady Macbeth have? Which means it's a question which you don't ask. I'm sorry. You have to discriminate between legitimate questions which are inside the frame of the story and non-legitimate. I know that students hate this statement of mine, but it is true. So I cannot tell you. There were a lot of siblings of, how do you say, Tomim? Twins in the world. You can have all kinds of answers, but they are all not important. What is important is that he finds a way. This is inside the story. So, you see, out of Cain came the urbanization, artists, and artisans. But now we have Lemech. And Lemech is the first poet. And you should write it, in English it's written like a poet. So he puts his 2 wives on the balcony, and he's standing there like a troubadour, and praising himself. Unbelievable. And in good biblical verse, he speaks. And he says, Adain Tzila, oh, how can my voice? You wives of Lemech, give ear to my speech. You see that there is a parallelism here, he repeats everything twice. For a man have I slain for my wound, a boy for my bruising. For sevenfold Cain is avenged, and Lamech 77. So here stands this hero and says, whoever touches me, I kill him. If it's a child, if it's a grown-up person. For I have slain a child for wounding me, and I have slain a person for what? For bruising me. Which means I'm strong, and I believe in violence, and nobody on earth dares to touch me. And you should be proud of your husband. So, my great teacher Kasuto, when I was a young student at the Hebrew University, said, what do we need the song of Lemech in the Torah? Well, it's such an ugly song. And he had this right insight. You tell me that we have to go home? No? I thought you bring me a warning.
No. Someone named Helena Kashtan is here.
Helena Kashtan?
Helena Kashtan?
Yes.
Your car is blocking something. The police called your daughter. Please go down to your car. Sorry.
So what did Kasuto say? Lemech is an embodiment of the generation of the flood. He's the seventh of the descendants of Cain, and he sings the song of violence. He does not regret that his forefather murdered. He thinks that there is enough space for other murderers on earth, and he makes a Haim for murderous revenge. Wonderful explanation. So you see that from one side, the descendants of Cain bring blessing to humanity, but the ugliness of Cain's murderous intention, violence, continues in Lemech. See how complex the story is? And Adam, now we end, and Adam again knew his wife, and she bore a son and called his name Shet, as to say, God has granted me other seed in place of Hevel, for Cain has killed him. As for Shet, and we are all the descendants of Shet, to him too a son was born, and he called his name Enosh, and it was then that the name of the Lord was first invoked. Now, this we call inclusion. The story starts with Adam knowing his wife and giving birth, and she gives birth to the firstborn. And after a long, long story, the story ends with a new intercourse, a new pregnancy, and a new son. But we are called by the Torah to compare the two reactions of our first mother. The first reaction was a Haim to fertility, in which she is a companion of God. And the second, exclamation, the second saying of her is very modest, and she says, thank you, God, that after that one son of mine has murdered the other, you give me another chance, and I'm still able to give birth to a child, and I call them a substitute, Shet, being a substitute for Hevel, the murdered one. So Cain killed not only his brother, he killed the high spirits, if you may say so in English, of his mother. Shalom v'litrot.